Today I've got a special friend of mine, Ryan Kertesz. I've known him for years, and he is the current owner of B&B Marina. And I'm really looking forward to talking to him. I've been trying to get him here for 2 weeks. We was talking about, let's see, what was it we was talking about when you came in? Oh, you had brunch today.
Yeah.
So, you're open. I noticed that tire store next to the Starbucks was open today. A lot of businesses are open on Sundays that you didn't used to be. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, we lived in the same town.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, there was very few restaurants. You could go to restaurants after church, but pretty much outside of that, you weren't going to get a service anywhere. Why do I think that is? I mean, the almighty buck, man. I mean, everybody's dragging through it now, so things are more expensive. So people are feeling drawn to it, plus customer demand. Less people going to church. Therefore, people are going to be more apt to get out there and start spending their money and shopping, whereas back in the day, it was more of a family event. It's kind of sad, really.
Whenever you read a story in the newspaper or see something on television about somebody getting arrested, you naturally assume they're guilty. Unless the story's about you or someone you love, then you'll think differently. And you'll want a lawyer who will defend you. My name's Scott Canavis. If you or someone you love has been charged with a crime, call me. I'll return your phone calls, I'll work on your case, and I will defend you.
Don't you think that people would still do business anyway? Like Chick-fil-A is not open on Sundays, but they say they miss out on a lot of money, but people wouldn't go there 7 days a week anyway. It may be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Possibly, but you've also seen with Chick-fil-A, the blowback that they're getting. I mean, it's all over. People attacking them viciously on public, the Facebook and YouTube, and they're attacking them for not being open on Sunday. So I think there's more, maybe not the profitability part of it, 6 of one, half dozen another, you're probably right, but socially, they're out attacking them for not being open.
Isn't that crazy?
I want it now, I want it here, I want it now, and you're going to do it my way. And if you don't do it their way, then you get attacked en masse, which is kind of the world we live in now, huh?
I guess so. Everything's so tribal like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and you like to say, if you want to be naive and safe, like I want to be, oh, that's just how things have kind of happened. But I think it's probably more something that's been constructed, people being separated into groups and then attacking each in a group, en masse, tribal. Instead of, if I had a problem with you 30 years ago, well, I might tell my best friend, well, man, that Dee, man, I got an issue with him. And then I'd probably come talk to you. Worst case scenario, we're going to slap each other a couple of times, and we'll be fine. We'll move on. Now, I'm going to get on there, and I'm going to tell 40,000 people how big of a pile you are. They're going to all attack you, and they're going to make you feel like garbage, and then you're going to be depressed and having to deal with the fallout from all that. So what was better? I mean, I think it's pretty easy to see that the way it was, as far as dealing with problems, was a lot easier and, face-to-face, confrontational, as opposed to a huge gang of people you'll never see, never know, never talk to, ganging up and attacking online. I mean, it's really sad, and that's less sad for you or I, but more sad for the kids in school now. You get somebody being a bully in school, which I was bullied and probably did some bullying myself. I'm not happy about that, but when it happens there, it's 1 or 2 or 3 things, 3 people. Now you got these people, entire schools jump on the bandwagon, and it's causing kids to do unthinkable things,
You think you were a bully in school?
Sadly, yeah. When I was in junior high,
Where'd you go, Cleveland?
I went to Bradley Junior and then Cleveland High School.
Yeah.
When I was in junior high, I was a little short, stocky guy, and of course, I grew up really poor. So back in junior high, the kids were probably the most cruel. If you didn't have, back in my day, if you didn't have the bass shoes, I don't know if you remember
Yeah, I
those or
remember
not.
those. Penny
All the cool
loafers.
kids had the bass shoes and the Izod and you know the hill figure and all that.
Yeah.
Of course, you got bullied, and of course I got bullied pretty intense. But then when I got to high school, I grew a lot in size, and of course I just used that what happened to me, and of course I bullied my fair share, sadly. Of course, you regret those things. We all make mistakes, but I went through the bullying stage and I went through the bullied stage. You know, so as you kind of get throughout that, you kind of grow through it. You know,
Which do you regret worse, being a bully or getting bullied?
I don't regret being bullied. I mean, of course, I couldn't help that. It was. I mean, I was the victim there, and I obviously do definitely regret bullying people. And it was a handful, and of course. It was a tit for tat on a few things, but of course, as you well know, with any relationship, if you, if you know if you can pick their weak spot and then attack them on that, it's the cruelest thing you can do. Of course, and that's the attack mentality. So when you're a bully, you do that. And looking back, you go, man, that was
Stupid.
That was just not. It was absolutely not cool, you know. But you grow from that, and as you get older, you realize, man, I really wish I would have done that. But there's a lot of things in your life, in my life, and you know, everybody watching's life.
Do you think it stops at our age, or is it still going? We're not going to be aware of it for 10 years. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, to a certain extent, maybe. I think that maybe we can weather it a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? I mean, our skin's a little thicker. We've been through enough. We've drugged through enough of life to where someone says something that is attacking you or whatever. I mean, I'm a sensitive guy. I know you're a sensitive guy. If someone says something that's hurtful, of course, you're like, wow, that stung pretty bad. It might stick with me for a few days, but it's not something that I'm going to dwell on forever. And I try to go way out of my way to not do it myself. You know?
What I get irritated is when they attack me for something that, in my mind, I'm not doing. That's worse. If I'm doing it,
Yeah, you're just getting your comeuppance at that point.
If I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and sometimes there's just no way to, I mean, the one good thing about the social media thing is things pass very quickly. I mean, you do something bad or they think you perceive something bad, well, that's a big story for 8.5 minutes, and then it's on to something else, you know, on something else, which is its own problem in its own right, you know.
Public has a short memory.
Yeah, or non-existent. It's almost like if it's in your face, I remember it. If it's not directly in my face, it's moving on.
Do you remember the days when you were doing landscaping?
Absolutely, yeah.
Were those good times or bad times, or are you glad you're out of it, or how's that?
You know, honestly, I met a lot of interesting people, a lot of good friends. I got lifelong friends throughout that process. Was it easy? No way, man. It was, especially 25, 30 years ago. You didn't have the equipment. You didn't have all of the support as far as information and equipment and really qualified laborers to help you, that you were basically on the pioneer path, you know. I mean, we were Oregon Trail, you know. I had the ox and the cart, and we were moving our way down into no man's land. But when I got out of it 5-6 years ago, I mean, it had come light years. I mean, we're basically talking horse and buggy days, comparison-wise, to moon landing.
But now, 5 or 6 years ago, have you been out of it? I thought it was longer than that.
Well, that hurts. No, we actually got in about 10 years ago. We got in with a large company out of Chicago doing primarily out-of-town work. They would send us all over the Southeast to do these gardens for their Alzheimer's homes that they had. And I'll tell you a funny story. It's an accident. And basically, everybody's life, in my opinion, is a series of accidents. Mine especially. I was doing a job for them, a big entrance area for this particular company. They have hundreds of homes, large nursing homes, specifically for dementia and Alzheimer's patients. And we're doing this big entrance, and the manager comes down. It's a very large project in Knoxville. First project I'd done for them of any size. And we were just doing a very formal entrance. You know, it was a week, 10-day job out of town. And they bring me into this courtyard. It's a very nice courtyard. It has all the nice concrete walkways, multi-level, completely contained courtyard for the Alzheimer's and dementia patients that are housed there. And she said, well, let me go back. As we're walking through the building to the courtyard, I noticed they've got these very expensive flat screen TVs, dozens of them, both sides of the wall. They've got vibrant pictures of frogs or a toucan or whatever, animals, pictures, flowers, whatever. And if you touch one or walk past it, it would make a sound, whatever the animal is or whatever. And I said, man, to myself, I said, that's an incredible expense. So I asked him, I said, why would you put so many TVs in here? And I'll never forget what she said. She said, well, we don't deal in hours or minutes or even seconds. We just deal in moments of clarity. And she said, if that frog moving and that vibrant color and the sound brings them just a moment of clarity, then it's worth it completely. And that's what we work with, moments. We're not looking for some big, majestic thing to happen. We just want to give them what we can along the way. And I said, okay, well, that kind of hit me a little bit, and I'm being a little sensitive, because I'm it's just a sad situation, So we walk out of this courtyard, and there's her and 5 or 6 other managers. It's a very, like I said, large place. And I'm like, man, these are really great walkways. But there's a couple of dead trees, a couple of struggling bushes, patchy grass, not attractive, not good. She said, what would you do here? And I said, well, how long do they stay out here? I mean, what's your guys' itinerary? She said, well, they stay an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half in the evening. And I said, well, that's a large portion of their day because they do spend a lot of time sleeping. She said, she already told me this. And she told me that they were having a hard time having the duration of visits from family and friends is very small. Like, you'd be amazed at what the amount of time people go and visit. It's moments, like 8 minutes, 9 minutes. That's the average minute, Come in, hug grandma, and then leave, So I said, okay, well, what if we do a nice cutting garden? Like, we can have large swaths of plants that will have a lot of movement, have a lot of color, bloom, spring, will make spring through fall, and then they can cut. The family can come in and cut little bouquets for them, put them in plastic things, and every week make it a kind of a thing that they can do with their grandma or whatever. I said, that's what I would do. Not expecting that we would do the job, because typically we didn't go out of town much. This was a kind of an anomaly, that is us being there in the first place. Well, long story short, I got an email from somewhere up in Chicago, or CC'd on one, and they're like, well, when can you do this? And I was like, well, what? And we want you to do this. It's a good idea, blah, blah, we're going to do it. And so we did that, and that led to the next one and the next one and the next one. So we stayed out of town. That's why you think I've been gone so long.
I guess
it's because
so.
we spent several years where I was out of town. But that was also, while it was a blessing because we made really good money, at the same time, it was also the death knell of me wanting to do it anymore. There's only so many times you can go to bed, talking to your wife on the phone from Charlotte or Memphis or Atlanta or wherever we're at, and just, good night, hope you're having a good night, blah, blah. I mean, eat a lot of, to-go pizzas. Now, my guys, I would kind of shuttle them in. They would siphon in. So I'd have a crew in there. If it was a 2-week job, they would go home for the weekend. Sometimes I'd stay, sometimes I wouldn't. But someone would stay in town the next week and do the small stuff we were having to do here. And then I'd bring new guys out to the job site. But it's very trying. And I would not recommend that for anybody to spend that much time on the road. It's just not healthy. Before you know it, you got no friends, you got no connections. Who cares if you make money?
And everybody you're using that was using you is using somebody else, so you get out of touch.
Yeah, you got to make sure that trade-off's worth it,
I remember I took a job in Fort Oglethorpe, and somebody said, you'll lose a lot of business here. I thought they were crazy. And they were right. By the time I got done with that, I still had jobs here, but the repetition of people calling me sure did stop.
Oh, yeah. And I remember back in the day, you and I talking, you were so busy, you couldn't even think about taking on another job. Just the thought of it.
I had it on my phone. Don't call me anymore.
Yeah.
Still got it on there.
Yeah, I would actually, sometimes I'd get your message, and it had nothing to do with me, and I'd be like, oh, man, now I feel bad. It had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But no, people always say, well, that's a good problem to have. Well,
It's
still
not
a major problem, man.
It's a major people don't understand.
They don't.
Figuring out how you're going to be 4 places before 10 o'clock in the morning.
And you better be, because if you're not, they're calling, and your name's Mud. It's tough. It is tough. And when people say that's one of my least favorite things. People say, well, that's a good problem to have. No, man, the key word in that sentence is a problem. It's a problem. No matter how you look at it, I would rather have, I'm sure then, if you could have thinned it out, you could have, honestly, if you look back, you could have probably made about the same amount of money and done things a little differently and had a little bit more sanity during that period of time.
It's incredible when you look back and you think about that. You think, because here's the thing, you'll actually throw money at the last job you're on to get it done.
You betcha.
To get this other one started.
You betcha.
And the next thing you know, you're just making the same. You're just not running as hard. Now, you don't build up more business that way. That way builds up more business.
Yeah, but at what cost, you know?
At a cost of just running yourself to death.
Yeah, at that point it becomes a pound of flesh type thing. You're literally selling off your sanity, your family time, and I mean, for what gain? I mean, you're talking at that point, even if you do double the numbers, you've got quadruple the problems and triple the loss. You know, the things that go missing, the things that get overlooked because you can't be there. By the time it's all said and done, you might do triple the business, but you're making your net profit's going to be 8% more. Is it worth it?
There's probably a sweet spot.
I never found it.
But you can't control when you get the jobs.
Right.
So you really cannot find that sweet spot. Now, these subcontractors, as you know, they need more respect than they get, don't they?
Yeah, especially, I mean, I've always said, and I've always told my guys when we're on the job, because a lot of times we come at the tail end. We're at the tail end, we have no time, and the budget's dead.
The budget's dead.
So we're at that bad point. But I told them, I said, listen, I said, you may think you got it rough, but when you think you do, look up top. Those guys up on the roof, we're in Hoover, Alabama. These guys were doing a strip mall. And I'm not kidding you, when I tell you it was 110 degrees, I mean, it was 110. We had to literally work at night. My guys were going down like flies. I mean, seriously. When one guy went to the hospital, I mean, he was dehydrated completely. You couldn't drink enough. You simply couldn't. So while we're doing that, up top, putting down a flat roof, rubber roof, those guys, if it's 110 where we're at, with that tar up there, it's got to be 140. I don't even know how they survive, honestly. But I tell everybody that's got an ear, I'm like, listen to me. You respect those roofers because they have got a tough job. And if you've never done it, you have no idea how bad it is. But I agree with you. Yeah, subs. I mean, because like you were talking about with the ebb and flow of jobs.
Yeah.
However, a GC would think, or a business owner would think, we can massage it some. The subs don't have that opportunity.
That's right.
I mean, they, especially back in the day, I mean, those poor guys were probably feast or famine. It was like you either have 6 weeks of extremely slow and 2 of the 8 guys are working, or you've got 8 guys working 12 hours a day and you need 14. And I feel like it was tough on them. It's still probably tough on them.
Think about this. When I take a job and I'm getting ready to start it, I've not gone around and asked all the subs that I use all the time if they want to take this job.
Yeah.
So they don't even know what's coming up.
Yeah. So
They're
you know
depending
here,
on me.
they know here, you know.
Yeah, and so now they've even got to be there more than I do because I've taken the job.
And a lot of them are really, really good at their reaction speed. You know, I've seen guys that have really busted up or split their crew as you have. I mean, and the loyalty of the guys, especially, I've seen some the subs that these GCs use that have used them for years and years. The loyalty of the subs. I mean, you don't see that very often.
It's incredible.
Yeah, you don't see it very often in life.
I've said before, I've got some subs that would spend a little time in jail for me.
Yeah.
And that's, you know what I'm talking about. That's
I'll take a bullet in the leg.
Yeah.
The meaty part of the leg.
Not kill
trunk
themselves,
shot, just meaty leg, yeah.
And but if I could write a book how to do this business I'm in and that you were in, I still couldn't write a book that would make sense. I don't know what the combination is.
No, I think a lot of it's just putting it together as you go.
You
You're
almost have-
ad-libbing it as it happens,
And you almost have to give up any outside life that you have.
It takes a hit.
You have to be just comfortable with just working and living
Yeah.
and just going home.
And it's tough. Like you got to have a wife that's willing to that can ebb and
Sure,
flow with that as
sure.
well. Thankfully, I've got a really good one. You've got a great one. It's tough on them, and behind the scenes, people. Well, you've heard it a million times. It must be nice to be your own boss. Well, hold on now. No, I have never been my own boss. I've always had dozens, and in this case, nowadays, hundreds, or in the summer, thousands of bosses a week. So you don't. It's not what people. The perception and reality are two different things. You've got to be able to. You've got to be able to morph. As going back to what you were originally saying. I mean, the reason we can't write a book about it is because every job's different. Every time's different. We've literally, just you and I, have lived through radically different financial situations just in the past 15 years. I mean, way up, way down.
Don't forget
way
04
up,
and
down.
05.
Oh.
You couldn't do it fast enough or charge enough. They still wanted it.
Yep. And then comes 08, 9, 10.
You couldn't
The
buy a
world-
job.
I remember driving through town, and I think I might have talked to you about this before. You couldn't find fresh construction. You couldn't see raw dirt on a construction site for a solid year. You could not find it. It wasn't happening. But now, 18 months before that, there were neighborhoods popping up left and right. If you wanted to work, you got the job. You just go do it. Take it. Can you do it? Do it.
And if that buyer didn't want it, I remember my uncle was, he used to say, I used to work for my Uncle Joe one day. I worked on every job he had from the time I was 12 to the time till I got my license. And he said, Dee, when the economy gets bad in the construction business, it happens overnight. And he was right. You literally wake up the next morning and it's over. And that's what happened in 08.
Yeah, and we saw the signs. You and I talked about it kind of coming up a little bit. We're like, okay, well, these diesel prices are getting kind of scary. People are starting to, the feel of humans around us was not good. But when it did happen, I expected it to kind of slow down. When it happened, it didn't slow down. It stopped.
My uncle said the iron door will shut.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
And even though I think you and I had talked about it as running up to it, neither one of us had any idea how bad that was going to be.
Had no clue.
And when it stopped, I mean, you went from getting any job you wanted to not be able to pay for a job. You couldn't buy a job because there was no jobs to even, you couldn't go underbid a job because there wasn't a job even underbid, So not only did you not have profitable jobs coming up, but you didn't have jobs coming up to pay payroll for the guys. Even if it was a break even or a slight loss, you didn't even have that option because there was nothing there, So
It was incredible. It was incredible.
well, I tell people since then, I feel like not near as bad, but hyperbole, I say I'm kind of a depression-era baby. You get very self-supportive. You don't want to deal with banks. You just don't want to deal with them. You don't, they went from, well, in 05, 06, I mean, my goodness, they'd call you up. Hey, would you guys need a couple more trucks?
I had a line of credit. I had an unsecured line of credit at every bank in town.
Yeah.
And I didn't ask for one of them.
Yeah. And
They threw them at you.
loan officers come out, they'd run out and high-five you, every time you went in there, and then all of a sudden, when everything hit the fan, not only did they not come out and high-five you, but the bank over here that I was dealing with, they shifted their loan officers from Cleveland to Maryville to Knoxville, Knoxville to Cleveland. That way, there was no personal connection whatsoever. And when they started cutting, and they cut to the bone, when they started cutting, they didn't care. They didn't know you. They didn't know me. They weren't. All the buddy time was over. So since then, I don't want to deal with them. I just don't want anything to do with
Not
them.
me no more.
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with them a lot, but it's on a, here's my payments, here's my contract with you. I'm
Yeah.
going to do this for this long.
Yeah.
But up until 06, it was 90-day notes and lines of credits.
Oh, it was a Wild West, man.
It was the
Yeah.
Wild West, and they were all, if you couldn't. But since then, I've started saying, here's the contract.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay you this much money for this many years, and then we'll renegotiate it.
Yeah.
But there's not any open-endedness
No, there's
with
no,
me.
I don't want any big balloon payments. I don't want any adjustable rates.
No.
I mean, those adjustable rates were the death of millions of people, man. I mean, all these, you can get this great deal on this ARM rate loan, and people do it, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it. And these people, the bankers on Wall Street, they're making so much money that felt like it was high times for everybody. And then when it all came crashing down, those banks got bailed out, and everybody lost their houses. It was crazy. It's one of those things where you just go, it's almost a rite of passage as an adult. It's when you realize you're not very important, and it's a truth that we all need to understand. You're not very important. Ego is worthless. You're not important. The government, if they want to do it, they're going to do it, and they're going to take care of the big boys, and the little guys, well, good luck, And it's happened time and time again. It's kind of like, it's like if you have a cheating girlfriend. You go back to her, guess what she's going to do? She's going to cheat on you again. Go back to her, guess what she's going to do? Cheat on you again. The government is similar to that to me. It's like they'll do, promise, and then all of a sudden, when it hits the fan, automakers are bailed out, airlines bailed out. Hell, even the Carnival Cruise Lines, like the cruise ship lines, bailed out.
What about bailing out Fred?
Ain't gonna happen. Never gonna happen.
It's never gonna happen.
It's never going to happen, which is a twist of irony, but it happens once and again and again and again. And for me, the big boy, the one that I really said, okay, this is it, was that 08, 09, 10, that crisis right there. That was when I was like, wow, that really doesn't make any sense to me.
If you didn't feel 09, you weren't aggressive enough prior.
That's true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If somebody says, well, I really didn't feel it, well, you either had a government job or you had a big job at a company, or you really weren't aggressive enough. Because, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I don't know very many people that would say that they didn't feel that particular thing. I mean,
I've heard a
maybe
lot
a
of them say,
couple of
oh,
trust
I
fund
don't,
people.
yeah.
Well, again, I think they're forgetting when you're in that. It's kind of like if you're 5 years old and you fell into the deep end of the pool, you don't know how to swim. Well, that is life-altering fear, right?
You'll probably never jump into the deep end again.
Until you're a teenager, and all the pretty girls want you to jump in there, and you jump in, and 15 minutes later you forget about that whole scary thing because now you got this licked. I think that's kind of a similar thing. It was diabolical to most people, and then people have come through it and said, well, it wasn't that bad. It's so far long ago. I fell in when I was 5. Now I can swim. It's one of those type things. It's a mental thing. It's almost probably Psych 101 is like a self-preservation thing, aside from the very few people that we talked about.
All right,
earlier.
let's go back. Let's go with that. Let's say that the guy was 16 or 18 during the Depression. Saw his dad lose his house. It was 1935 before things got back to normal. And then he went to the war. That guy's 95 today, and he won't borrow money to buy toilet paper. So he never did jump into the deep end of the pool again.
That's true, but some of them did. They came back. They got the house. They lived the 50s life. They got the big cars and the fancy stuff, and then joined the country club. And then looking back, that batch of them would say, "Yeah, I grew up a little rough, but look what I've done." It wasn't as bad as it was. I pulled myself out of that.
Are we one of those people, or because now you're on
Oh,
you're on
gosh.
B&B Marina? I mean, that's got to be a massive undertaking.
It is. I mean, it's tough, but I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question, Dee.
I mean, are you doing it again?
No, I'm doing it fiscally a heck of a lot smarter than last time around in my 08, 9, 10. Mainly because I've learned what we talked about, financials. I don't really want to be in deep with banks. I don't want to be in deep with, if it takes a little longer to do something, it takes a little longer to do it. I don't have to have right now, right then type stuff. But as far as the marina is concerned, that was an accidental purchase. I wasn't looking to buy a marina. I had called my wife 6 months, 8 months before that. And I was like, I think I was in, somewhere in North Carolina. And
Were you working on the job then?
yeah, my guys.
Because Tony Webb owned it before, right?
Tony Webb and
Toddy. Was
Toddy
Toddy?
Chastain. Yeah. So Tony was in there for a year or two, and then he sold his shares to Toddy. So Toddy owned it fully when I got it. Now Toddy, of course, he had other things going on, and he was like, "Look, man, I don't want to be 100 years old and retiring." He said, I'm going to kind of slow my pace," which I think was incredibly smart. I really, when I grow up, I want to be Toddy.
Yeah. He's smart, isn't he?
Very smart,
Very
and
smart.
he's willing to make a decision like that,
Yeah.
which is hard. It's it's a very difficult decision to go. I'm slowing my pace intentionally. I'm gonna enjoy my life while I'm younger, and I'm gonna live in the pot that I'm making right now. I dig it. I think it's a really good move. But I bought it from him. He called me up. I was midway through a large renovation of the house I live in, which is 30 seconds away from the marina. And I really liked knowing the owner. I liked Toddy. I was like, this is cool. Toddy's my buddy. He owns a marina. I'll be gassing my boat up. I can go up there and have a hamburger, whatever. It's nice to see him. He called me up halfway through this and said, "Hey, man, I should let you know I'm selling the marina." I was like, whoa, buddy. I said, "What do you mean you're going to sell the marina? I'm deep in this renovation. My wife's, this is probably going to be the house we die in." I said, "I don't want you to do that." I said, what if we don't like the new owner?" He said, "Well, there's one way that you can solve that problem. You buy it." I said, No, sir. I don't want a marina. I don't want to deal with that. It's a lot of work.
Were you doing landscaping at the time?
Yeah. Well, no, I'd called my wife months before that, and I said, I'm burnt out. I knew at the time. You kind of know, and I've done every possible thing. We've done a huge job for Hathcock over here, millions of dollars. We've done huge jobs, and I've done the basic stuff 400 times. I mean, you go into a regular house, there's so many things you can do, and that's it. You do it enough, you're just like, okay, it's another piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. It's a big stack of Xerox paper. You've seen it all. And I just told her, I said, I don't want to be out of town anymore. I want to do something different. I don't know what it is, but we'll figure it out. She said, okay. Well, of course, we were booked up for 9 months or 10 months ahead of schedule. So it wasn't a rush. I was not in a rush. And I did not think of, when I talked to Toddy, I did not think that, hey, maybe this is a possibility. When he told me that, I was mostly defensive and sad that he was going to be getting rid of the marina, because I like Toddy. And then when he brought that up, I was like, well, let me look at the financials. Let me look at what it is. So we looked at it, and we started talking. We talked for a couple weeks, and I brought it to my wife. I said, what do you think about buying the marina? And she said, absolutely not. She said, it's hard to deal with up there. I mean, it's, when you're up there and you see all the workers, you're like, man, they're working their butts off. And it doesn't seem attractive to me. It's not a shiny lollipop that you're like, I definitely want to eat that. No, man, it's a tough job. But we looked at it, and Tony and I got back, talking about financials, and he was very fair with the deal. And they weren't big on the restaurant. They didn't really want to do it. And as a matter of fact, he told me one bit of advice. He's like, man, run the marina, don't do the restaurant. And I was like, man, he's crazy. My wife's a foodie. She's going to want to change all this up and change all the food and this and the other. And so we went that route, of course. We've, expanded, from the day we bought it, it's under construction. I mean, it's just been one thing or another. So now we've expanded the restaurant, the kitchen, had a second, small restaurant on the waterfront, brought in a chef. We've got some really talented line cooks. All that being said, he was absolutely right. The marina is relatively easy to run. The restaurants are very difficult to run. I mean, you got so many people, so many workers, so many customers, so many variables that can go wrong. And even if you're doing the absolute, and you can imagine, unlike a regular restaurant, at the marina, it's 80%, 70% of our sales are in the summer. Then we stay open during the wintertime in order to keep our talented line cooks, our main staff, all that being said, basically, you got, instead of having 2 tops, 4 tops, 6 tops, a couple, a family, and a group of friends, out there in the summertime, you've got pontoon boat loads, whole pocket yachts that come in with 14 people.
God.
So an average restaurant, because when I did my share of serving back in the day, it was very uncommon. It was like only after church did you have a group that was bigger than 8 typically.
Yeah.
In the summer, forget about it, man. You're talking 8 tops, 10 tops, 12 tops, 14, 18 tops. I mean, just one after the other, and sometimes packed together. So you've got to be able to handle that and have enough. And trust me, it's been very, very difficult. And you don't win every time. You just don't. I mean, the first 2 or 3 years of doing this, it was very difficult to get workers. I mean, during the 20, 21, 22, I mean, there's very few workers to be had. You know, we did what we could as best we could. And of course, you come up short sometimes. I mean, you get piled at the door. You've got 3 people in the kitchen and doing the absolute best they can. And God bless their hearts. I mean, I haven't worked with a bad one back there. They have really killed it. But you get, if you got 4 people, even with all the equipment back there and the setup as best you can, if you get 160 people come in, to go orders and, people sitting down, 160 people within 10 minutes, you're done, man. It'd be like fighting Mike Tyson.
You just couldn't, there's no way you could be sitting ready for that.
You cannot. And now, all that being said, now things have kind of turned the corner last year, and this year has been incredible. We've had a couple of really good chefs, and thank God for them. We've got a great chef out there now that's running the pavilion, kind of overseeing both of the kitchens. And the line cooks we've got now are very qualified. They've been with us for durations now. I've got one guy that's been back there for 4 years now. And I think that's the ticket to
You've
success.
always had people that stuck with you.
I like to think so. I mean, I like to treat them good. I mean, I'm not going to, and I'm back there helping. I'll expo, there's no reason to have any kind of ego. I mean, I'm not going to act like I'm better than or anything. I'll never ask any one of my workers to do something I'm not doing then or willing to do, in a minute. But I think that might be part of it. I'm not going to stand off. I'm going to be in there with them.
And you couldn't lease out the restaurant, then you wouldn't have any control at all. And they'd just,
that's the catch.
You got it rolling now. I was there 4th of July, maybe?
Okay, so it was really busy then.
Yeah, Adam Gage was in there.
Adam Gage, old Gage.
Yeah.
It's done really well. I mean, but it takes time, and that's what people have a hard time understanding. When you're understaffed, 20, 21, 22, when you're understaffed and you're doing what you can, sometimes you do come up short. You don't quit. I mean, you've seen those Jeeps going up the Widowmaker or whatever. Sometimes they don't make it to the top. Like we'll have to roll back down. Well, they just gear down and they try it again. They'll get up there. They only lose if they quit. So we didn't quit. I mean, obviously we just changed gears and we just pushed as hard as we could, and we eventually made it to the top of there. And I feel like this year has been. This is the first summer of 5. As a matter of fact, our 5-year ownership anniversary is October 1st, so we're right upon it. This is the first of those seasons that we've done. So we have 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So 5 seasons. This season, by far, was the best. Coming out of it, I didn't feel that pure anxiety, the pure fret that I've had before. So I consider that a great victory because the first year or 2 was very hard.
Was it as hard as the landscaping business, or just different?
No, different, but every bit as hard. I mean, I thought, wrongly, I thought, okay, I'm going to slow myself. As I'm getting older, I'm going to slow down a little bit, just a little bit, and kind of re-gauge where I'm going to do with the next final run of my working life. And boy, I was wrong. I'll tell you what. I mean, it was hubris on my part because. When I got in there and, COVID happened immediately. I mean, honestly, like we bought it October 1st, 2019.
God,
and
it's almost like Toddy saw it coming.
Toddy. Within 6 months, before we even opened at all, for the first sandwich to be ordered, the health department was out there. And they're like, okay, they can't sit here, they can't sit here, they got to flip over this, got to flip over that. I looked at Carrie and I go, all right, well, I just embarked us on a very, very bad plan. This could ruin us. We can't sell anything, and we've, here we are, we're scared to death, this is it. But thank God, everything moved through that, and it actually turned out to be a fruitful thing for us because people were flocking to the river during that period of time. It took a while for everything to kind of move in that way. But we've learned as we've gone, and I'm grateful to be here now. And I tell people as a joke, and my favorite day of the year when you're a kid is Christmas or your birthday or whatever. Now, in this current stage of my life, my favorite day of the year is July 5th. Because you've gotten through that craziness, and now you're going to coast out. You're going to coast. And you've got your regulars. You've got the people you are familiar seeing. They're coming out there 3 and 4 times a week, and that, to me, that is I don't know, therapeutic to a certain degree. And what I do really appreciate about the marina specifically, and Charleston, Calhoun area. I've lived in Cleveland. You know, I lived on the river. I lived mostly in Cleveland. And Cleveland was growing and growing and growing and growing, as people have already know. But the very first busy weekend of the summer, the very first summer, things were going on. I'm stressed. I'm sweating, stress sweat, heat sweat, all the sweats. There was a fisherman had his bearings had blown out of his wheel, right? So he couldn't move his trailer. Now, the people are backed up all the way up the road with their trucks and trailers trying to get parking spots and putting their boats in. This poor guy, he'd been there early. A lot of times the fishermen would come in. It's kind of ownership of the river. Fishermen come in from 4 o'clock in the morning until about 9:30, 10 o'clock. They own the river. Then after that, there's a transition, and then they leave, and then the recreational boaters take over at that point. It's kind of a unspoken thing for the most part. And, and when you try to appease that too. You know, if you get out there a little bit early, be nice to the fishermen. I mean, they're there, they're doing their thing. Stay back, man. Don't wake them. For Pete's sake, that you're early.
And after lunch, don't expect the fishermen.
Yeah, I mean the fishermen. If you're out there, if they're at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's going to be a wakeboarder come by here in a minute, or some jet skis. God bless them. But the fisherman, he was a nice guy, older fella, and he comes to me. He's like, "I'm sorry, I'm trying to get out of here. I've got my bearings. I got to go to town and get new bearings." He goes, "Is there any way you can help me get this wheel off?" I said, "Absolutely." I didn't have any time. I had no time. I was supposed to be here and there and everywhere else. But I run to the shop. I grab my little floor jack and the tools to take his wheel off. When I get back over there, Dee, there's 3 other guys. Totally, three guys that don't even know each other had already gotten his tire off. They'd already jacked up and took his tire off. Now, these guys, they're all recreational boaters. They had their families with them, whatnot. They had grease all over their arms. They helped this guy out just to help the guy out. Now, have that same guy have that same problem in a big city, or even the middle of Cleveland. Is someone going to hop out, roll up their sleeve, and get greasy?
Call a wrecker.
Yeah, I mean, a cop probably won't even get out of his car. He'll just probably put his lights on, call a wrecker. No one's going to help you. So for me out there, it's almost like 1975. People are very much apt to help you. I would, in Cleveland, or not even Cleveland, if you go to a bigger city, let's just take like Nashville. If you go to Nashville and you have an issue, you expect you're on your own. You need to call somebody to help you, this, that, and the other. No one's just going to stop and help you. Out there, it's the other way around. If you have a problem, you pretty much expect someone's going to stop and help you because they do. And that, to me, that is therapeutic. And I thought, I was like, that means something to me. People help each other still. People talk. And it's a great equalizer. You can be out there and you can have a millionaire walking down the road, walking down the docks, talking to average Joe like me, or a kayaker, and everybody's just talking on even terms. Nature does that. It's not just the river. It's like
it's nature does that.
You could be up on the Appalachian Trail, be walking, camping out next to a multi-millionaire, and you could be sitting there with a beatnik or your average Joe, and everybody's talking in equal terms. So I think nature does that, and I appreciate that.
So what are your hours there?
In the summer it feels like it's all day, every day. We're closed on Mondays like every other marina.
So no restaurants open on Monday? No,
nothing. I mean, the marina itself is shut down on
Monday.
You
had brunch today?
Yeah, they have the pavilion serves brunch on Sundays, southern breakfast on Saturdays, and that's from 11 to 2 on both days. Otherwise, they're on the regular menu.
Was there a big crowd there today for lunch?
It was a reasonable crowd. Yeah, it was. It's the weather dictates a lot of what happens out there. Plus, September's always a little bit of a slow time. I think it's kind of people getting out of getting back into the groove of things. So you have a dip in September, and then October comes up. We have we've started doing these hay rides again, trying to build the community, strength together. A couple years ago, we started with a tractor hay ride, and we thought, my wife, she's really pushing that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, we'll get a 18-foot trailer, pack it up with straw, get the tractor out there, and we got with the neighbors in Marina Hills Circle, which where I live. And they're a great, I couldn't ask for better neighbors. So they organized and they started sitting out and dressing up and giving out candy. Kind of like setting there, or basically when we were kids. When we were kids, I missed the trick-or-treating. The block party kind of put a bullet in that, but it's kind of going a throwback to that. So we're trying to do that. Well, that first year, we thought we'd do 1 or 2 runs. We ended up having to do 4 runs and it takes about an hour to go through the whole thing. We ended up having to do 4 runs into the dark, but we still didn't have the capacity. People having there were a couple of trucks with kids piled in it, following the wagon as we went around. So last year, because we had so many, I got Clancy to come up and bring a second tractor.
He lives over there, right?
He does. He's now my neighbor. So he graciously brought his tractor and another trailer, and we loaded both those down, and we followed each other. Of course, we've got follow the little Polarises with the lights on, so we follow it for safety and whatnot. But it was a tremendous amount. We still had to do 2 full runs. It took an hour and a half per time. There were so many kids all over the neighborhood, and we still had people with trucks and kids all over. So it's kind of grown exponentially throughout just 3 years that we're trying to even kind of make it a little bit more of a thing. I think they're doing face painting, they're doing pumpkin painting there, they're doing
and what is
kids'
this?
games.
What weekend is this?
It's the weekend before, I think it's the Saturday before Halloween. So, but it's kind of one of those things you're like, well, this is probably going to work, and it doesn't, or this may not work, and it really, really does. It's one of those. But it just gives people an opportunity to meet their neighbors, People, typically it's the northern end of the county, typically, not saying that's entirely, because we get a lot of people from all over the county, and we get Athens and whatnot. So, but a lot of people don't, going back a step. When we were kids, when I was a kid, my parents knew this neighbor, across the street, down the neighborhood. They knew them all. They all knew each other. If your kid acted up, you knew about it. You couldn't make it home fast enough before your mom got a call from wherever you acted up. Well, it's not that way anymore. People don't really react to each other one way or the other. And a lot of times, there'll be neighbors that have been, living beside each other for 5, 7, 10 years.
Never even spoke.
Maybe a hand wave.
At the most.
And that makes me sad. So I want people to sit and talk like we're talking now. That is, who would ever thought that this would be an anomaly? This is not how people react.
No.
Now people are like, I emailed you, I CC'd you, I Facebook.
What we're doing
DM'd
here
you.
is what they don't do anymore. That's one reason why it's so popular.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, good. But people don't know how to discuss anymore. And I think that's kind of why people are so mad at each other all the time. Again, you should be able to talk things out, and you can when you're looking at each other. It's really hard. Like back when texting was a fairly new thing. I'm dating myself now, but when texting was a new thing, people would accidentally type in all caps, and people were like, "Oh man, this guy, man, he's mad. He's mad at me." Well, he wasn't. He just actually had caps on.
Yeah, he didn't know how to turn it off.
So when you have conversations with people, email, DM, text, whatever, it doesn't translate anywhere near as the real thing. Talking to each other, if the guy that was in all in caps, in real life, you'd know if he was meaning it because he'd be yelling at you. But if he's just telling you, then there would be no cause for ill reaction, and I think that's kind of where we're at as a society now. People are absolutely, flammably reacting to stuff that doesn't necessarily need that kind of reaction.
I had a smart guy tell me one time, never listen to what people say, look at what they do.
That's right. Yeah.
And don't listen to what they say, because they can't, some people just can't articulate it.
Also very true.
And they certainly can't do it in text or I'll voice text stuff now, and unless you know what I'm dealing with,
Yeah.
you'd have no idea what that means.
Or if you
but
know
if we've
you-
been dealing with it, then you say, "Oh, he's meaning that."
Yeah. But then if you get someone on the peripheral looking at it, all of a sudden,
You
right,
can start a war with the text.
funny you should say that. We're almost at that level now, aren't we? Like in the world. I mean, now you got
Absolutely.
if I feel like if these people that are having issues, they would sit down and have a moderator and discuss grievances. I feel like that would be a lot easier than bombing the daylights out of each
A lot of
other.
times, if you know where somebody came from, then you know why they're thinking the way they're thinking.
Yeah.
And that can change your view of them.
Yeah, you get a good idea of their trajectory of thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because if they're here, you can kind of guesstimate this is kind of where they're going to go, and this is kind of where they're going to go, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but you're right. But it takes also like a little bit of discipline on your part. If everybody had a little more discipline, a little less ego, then perhaps we wouldn't be in the state we're
But
in.
in the state we're in, hasn't that been since the beginning of time? I mean, what has changed other than speeding it up?
Well, other than speeding it up, that's a very few words to describe something very major. It's like, think about normal life. Do you feel like your life, your world around you is a lot more hurried than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Me personally,
Just the world around you.
yeah, the world around me, but I think it's also more confusing, and that sometimes is mistaken for a fast pace because it's just confusing.
Well,
Maybe that's my perception.
Well, confusion breeds that anxiety and the hurriedness.
And maybe
the-
so.
So, I mean, it breeds these ill elements. And, it just seems like people had more time. Well, I'll just stop there. People had more time. They just had more time to do things that they wanted to do. I mean, now it feels like,
Well, even if you had to sit down and you're just going to tell somebody off, then you'd have to sit down and write out a letter, and
Yeah.
you might be, they had all kinds of letters Lincoln wrote but never mailed.
Yes.
He probably finally, in other words, if you wrote it out like that, you probably before you licked them, maybe I'll not send that.
that's the old 10 seconds before you say something mean rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, though,
Nowadays,
no one,
it's-
no. You're like, did you just
I'll show that.
send
son
it?
of a-
And
I'll
once
show
it's, and it goes back to like some things, once they're said, they can't be unsaid. Once you say them, they're said, man. That Pandora's box open, you've said it, you've hurt this person, you've attacked, and you probably don't.
and they'll never forget it.
No, and especially if you go off, off the cuff there and you don't have all your facts and you say something hurtful, then it's on you. You're like, wow, that was, man, I wish I wouldn't have sent that. How many times? Millions a day, probably millions since we've been talking. People have collectively sent something that they wish they were like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. That wasn't cool.
I blessed out an electrician one time, and he didn't deserve it,
Oh,
and he's never forgot it.
see. I'm sure
And
you've,
I was wrong.
yeah. Did you tell them that?
No.
Well, that might be
That
why
might
I
help.
hasn't forgotten it. I believe the forgive
Yeah.
and forget is
Yeah.
kind of like a combo
Yeah.
pack. It's a peanut butter and jelly.
You may be right, yeah.
You maybe call this electrician up and be like, hey man, remember 15 years ago?
Well, I'm hoping he forgot it,
Well, I think he's hanging on
but
to
I
it.
think
Dee.
he's hanging on to it.
All right.
But human nature, hasn't it always been the same?
Yeah, but amplified now. I think everything's
You
amplified.
think it's amplified or just sped up?
Maybe both. Maybe it's got a faster tempo and it's amplified. I think it's louder and it's quicker.
But we're not killing people for saying it. So in a sense, it's gotten better.
Well, hold on.
Well,
Yet,
yeah.
I mean, at the pace we're at now,
Well, you're right, I guess.
I never thought I'd come to this point, but I'm genuinely glad that I'm the age I am. I wish I wouldn't want to be younger, and I say this in the nicest way. I actually feel bad for the younger generation. I feel like in a sense, we've kind of set the stage for what's happened now. I mean, let's just say the newest generation, the 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, that group there. I remember when I was that age, and here's the thing, it's not like, we're not 90 years old
No,
talking
we're not
about
that
the old
old.
days.
No.
We're upper middle age maybe.
Yeah.
But we're sitting here talking about these times. I bought a 1-year-old house, my first house I ever bought. 1-year-old, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, $72,000. Brand spanking new. Had been lived in for 9 months. And now, to buy that same piece of property, it'd be $350,000, $400,000. I bought it when I was 19. Now, do you think a 19-year-old now could go buy a $350,000 or $400,000 house? Absolutely not. And whatever happened, and I'm not saying it's me or you or anybody specifically, as a group, not only we've allowed it somehow through government, through bad decisions throughout the process, one way or the other, doesn't matter exactly who was responsible, we're at the precipice now where what we could do then and did, I'm not saying it's hard for them to do, I'm saying it's impossible. So I feel like outside of a trust fund person or somebody gifting them a house, for them to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, they do not have. And I feel bad about that. And I'm aware of it. There's no easy solution to it, there's just no easy solution to this. It takes years for this to happen. And when I say years, like 3 or 4 years of really, really bad things happening on top of. It's kind of like a bad thing amplifies the next bad thing, and it kind of just is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what was attainable is not. And how do you fix that? I don't know. But I'm genuinely glad that I'm not 20 years old.
If I was 20 years old, I don't know if I'd go to college or get into, I have no clue what I'd do.
Well,
unless I just had a real hankering to be a doctor or a lawyer. If I didn't know, then I don't know how I'd figure it out.
Well, I'll tell you this. I would figure out if I had a desire to do plumbing, electrical installation, or welding. And whatever I did, I'd make sure I was the best I could be at it. If you get yourself a top grade welder right now,
All right.
go to school, be the best you can possibly be, you're going to do well.
Now, he's going to be what me and you were at during 2000, 2010s, which we've already determined was no fun.
Well, it's not fun. I mean, very few people have fun careers, I don't think. I mean, I think there's a couple people that accidentally end up in those situations, but very few people go, that whole, find out what you love and do it.
I don't know about
Come
that.
on, man. Find out if that was the case and everybody'd have backed up septic, pipes would be breaking, no electric.
Nobody'd want to do that.
It doesn't work that way.
What's a good point?
Yeah, so the reality of it is,
That's a good point.
find something that is tolerable and you can have a personal life doing it and make good money and do it.
Max Everhart said, find a need and fill it.
Absolutely. It's a great...
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, same. I mean, find where you can make good money and not absolutely sell your soul. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm sure there's probably one or two, but the vast 99.9% of us on our deathbed with 30 seconds left, the vast majority of us are not going to go, oh man, if I could have just made $1,000 more. That doesn't go through your head. What you're going to say is, man, I wish I'd have not done as much and spent more time with my son or my mom or my aunt or whoever. You're going to think those thoughts. And that's how you should really live your life. And I'm not a good example.
Yeah.
I'm not a good example. I'm a terrible example of that. But I feel like as I'm turning this corner in my life, I'm getting older, I'm realizing at least at a reasonable age that that's how you should live. You got to make time for, because I mean, we were very lucky as our family. I mean, we were a very young family. I had a ton of cousins. I had a ton of aunts and uncles. My grandparents were alive. It was great. We had no death in the family for ever. I mean, all the way up until
Everything was
probably
happy.
10 years ago. And finally we aged out, I mean, people started getting old, things started happening. And you lose an uncle, lose another uncle, lose a grandpa. You lose these people and you go, man, boy, I remember very specifically the last conversation I had with them. You lose your friends. I mean, Joe Rogers, he was a mentor of mine, a great friend of mine, a great man. Never in a million years. And I don't know if it was because I was so insulated from having to deal with that, but I didn't even think of that as like anything in the, short future. But you always wish, you go, man, I wish I'd have gone to dinner one more time with them. Wish I had one more coffee with them. I wish I'd have just hugged them one more time, And as you get older, you start seeing that and the value of that, which you wish you'd have known before, but wisdom, you have to pay for that, you start gravitating towards financials are very important.
It's a fool's game.
But, yeah,
it's almost a fool's game.
It is a fool's game. I mean, and what are you going to take with you? Nothing, man. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money you got. You're taking nothing with you. What are you doing this for,
Well, let's say the mall was for sale for, I'm just making something up, say $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were 20, that might be a good investment for you.
Yeah.
Now, if you're 90 or 70 and you need a hip replacement, and they say the mall's for sale for $5 million, you might say, give me a Starbucks coffee. It's a little too expensive, but that's a better deal for me right now.
That's right. Well, some of those guys, and I've got friends that are into property, a lot of property, and I've had the same conversation with them. I'm like, why are you doing this, man? I mean, by the time this thing actually starts turning a profit, what are you going to be, 114 years old?
Yeah.
But the way I look at it, and these particular guys I'm talking about, great guys, tough guys, good dudes. It's like Mike Tyson, okay? He's a prize fighter. He likes to win. He likes to win. I don't know how old Mike is now, 50-something years old. He's still in good shape. So that equates to still in great financial shape.
Yeah.
They like that win, man. So Mike is willing to go in the ring to this very day. Like, I think they've got one scheduled.
Yeah, well, Jake Paul, right?
So he's waiting to get in there because he wants to go out there and he wants to win. He wants to put him down. Same thing with these guys. It's not the age. I mean, they know they're older. They want that win, man. They want that knockout blow. It feels good to connect that shot. And
maybe that is living.
today, yeah. I mean, it's a dopamine squeeze. Wow.
Yeah, but if we go with that thought, we got to say that 90-year-old guy that's in the hospital needing hip replacement, that the mall's a good deal for him.
If he gets that dopamine squeeze. But you don't want to sacrifice, going back, when you got tons of money, you can pull that off, get the dopamine hit, and take the win. That's one thing.
Maybe.
But working yourself to the bone 80, 90 hours a week in a job you hate because you're over-leveraged is the opposite of that. That's basically a recipe for depression.
I got this rich friend that's, I said to him one time, I said, because I don't know the right answer. I'm just giving another example. Mm-hmm. But I got this rich friend that he said he developing 8 subdivisions right now. 10 years ago, I said, are you sure you want to do this at your age? I said, why don't you just go sit on the beach? He said, I tried that. It's miserable, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you get my age. And I said, well, these problems that you're having are $20,000 problems at a time. I said, do you still think that? And he said, yes. So he was serious about it.
Yeah.
So that was a good thought. Now fast forward 10 years later, he's in the hospital today. He's got those 8 subdivisions and they're driving him crazy. So I don't know if it was the right decision or not.
Well,
so I can give you examples both ways on everything.
So I think it was safe to say that we're going to agree on the old moderation is key. Go for the fight, just don't go for the prize fight.
Well, that couldn't give him the dopamine, one.
Well, take a little squeeze of dopamine. He's looking for the...
You know, when I turned 50, I went to lunch with Jim Sharp, and I said, Jim, can you still develop and build and everything when you're 50? He said, Dee, when you're 50, you can build as much as you want, you can develop as much as you want, and you can invest as much as you want. You just can't make any mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Here's the bar. It's
Yeah.
high. Yeah. Yeah. And Jim Sharp, he developed, they're
I
growing
mean,
up. Every subdivision in town.
Yeah.
Jim
In other
Sharp,
words, you don't
Sharp
have
development.
time to come out. Like you say, just maybe a little bit of that dopamine. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, a little dose here and there.
Now, if you had kids that were coming up in the exact same business, you wouldn't have to have a cutoff.
That's right. You could just run it out and just kind of slowly
Run out the clock.
pair out.
Yeah.
Depending. But again, I mean, we're just two guys sitting in a room, you know. I mean, the perspective is going to be different for everybody in different situations. So, I mean, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy that would be willing to buy the mall for $5 million at 75. I wouldn't do it, you know. But again, perspective. You know, there's different guys that are going to do different things, and there's probably those guys wouldn't do the things I've done either. So, you know, what we would consider a mistake, maybe they're right for them. What I do is probably a mistake to them. You know, so I can honor that. Different perspectives for different people.
So maybe it doesn't. Maybe the answer doesn't matter. Maybe you just do what you want to do.
Yeah, and be aware that. You know, here's the travesty.
We're all assuming we're going to live to be 90.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
be aware that one day we're going to be gone. And here's the sobering fact. Whatever you build, outside of something crazy like, you know, the Statue of Liberty, whatever houses you build, neighborhoods you build, whatever I do at the marina, whatever you do, in 50 years, no one's going to know who did it. No one's going to care who did
Maybe
it.
50.
And in 100 years, most everything you did is going to be tore down.
Maybe 20 years.
Yeah, for the average, the average person is probably
How many
not.
times have we said, "Hey, I hadn't seen so and so," and they say,
Well, he died.
"Did he pass away? I can't remember. Can't even remember."
And it turns out it was 8 years ago.
There's not many people that know Jim Sharp.
Yeah.
We've just mentioned him. And
Yeah.
you take somebody 25 or something, they say, "Who?"
Yeah. And you're talking about a guy that had sharp development signs on the front of every
He
big
was
neighborhood.
He
in
was
town.
big.
Yeah.
Even he couldn't get.
So, but that goes back to that. You kind of balance, you know, what's real and what's not, what's important, what's not. I've been terrible at it.
Maybe that's the hard part.
That's definitely
Maybe
hard.
the easy part is getting dopamine hits and resting on the couch. Maybe all of those are the easy path for whichever one makes you feel better. Maybe the hard part is finding the moderation. Maybe that's the trick.
Oh, I'd say that definitely is the hard part. I mean, is it easier to train for 4 years to do the Boston Marathon or take a hit of heroin? Well, one's easy and quick, but destructive. The other is difficult and hard and long, but ultimately productive.
And maybe the guy that just exercises every other day and runs 3 miles, maybe he's the one better off than the person even doing the marathon. Maybe his is the moderation.
That's probably right. Yeah, you're probably right.
Maybe he stays with it.
Yeah, probably he has time to go and have a picnic with
Yeah,
his wife and
right.
go throw the ball with the kid. I mean, it probably is the best route, you know?
Do you think it's all about the journey? I mean, when you think about your journey, I mean, aren't you a college graduate?
No, I just went to leave for a couple of years. Yeah, I was actually a history major.
History major.
Yeah, I always loved military history, so I went into history. Dr. Snell was my advisor, smartest guy I've ever met in my entire life. I used to love just go to his office and just whatever he wanted to talk about, let him talk. He knew if there was a sizable tree in the county, he knew exactly every bit of the history, who lived there, what farm it was on. It was really impressive. The guy's an impressive dude. But I realized that I would, because he was pretty open about it, he was like, "We're gonna have to get you an education minor. You're gonna have to be a teacher." And I was like, "Well, whoa. Not big on the kids. I don't really like the kids." He said, "Well, what do you want to do with this?" I was like, "Well, I figured, I could get into, curating, things of that nature." And he's like, "Man, that's like 0.01% of history majors." He said, you got to be pragmatic about it. He said, "You're going to have to be a teacher." So I got to looking at that and I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. It's not what
That's not you.
I don't want to do that. Yeah. So I ended up taking a job with Forrest Preston up here at Life Care, just doing some outdoor lawns for his work with Danny Mole back in the day and Bobby DeLay. And that's kind of what accidentally, again, going back to my accidental life, I started doing that because I didn't want to be a teacher. Accidentally got into that. Accidentally bought the company, Southern, from Bobby that I ran what I was going to do for 2 or 3 years, turned out to be 25 years. And then, of course, we've talked about me accidentally buying the marina. So,
Or were they all accidents, or did you subconsciously put yourself in a position to do
well,
that?
they were not what you thought. Like, if you say, let me guess where I'm going to be in a year, there was none of that was on my radar at any of those points. You know, it'd be like if you guessed right now what you'd be doing in a year, and then all of a sudden in a year you got a good deal on like a traveling carnival
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
That would freak you out because that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. That's kind of how it's been. But it's all happenstance. But I believe things do happen for a reason, and there's a reason why. I believe that I think you've got decisions to be made. Of course, it's free will, but when you make those decisions, you're putting people's lives. Like I've been very grateful to be around the regulars out there and to meet a lot of the older folks that live out there by the river. I've learned a lot from them. I mean, had I not accidentally bought the marina or not been in the position where that was an opportunity.
Or at the marina,
Yeah, I would
renovating
not
the
have
house.
had that. So, I mean, I've met some really great people, and I'm very grateful for that. In the entire process of my life, I've made some terrible mistakes. I've made some really good decisions, but, you know, you take what you get and you lose what you lose. But if you learn from it, certainly it's worth doing. I feel like that the marina has been a really great thing overall, you know, as the net total is a win for me personally, as far as like meeting people and having the opportunity to discuss with people.
Well, you got it real clean. It's real organized. And you can just tell that you got everything, because you always were a little OCD, maybe. Would that be the word for it?
A little bit, maybe, yeah.
A little bit or a lot?
It depends on the day or time of day, yeah. But I mean,
you keep your paperwork like this, right?
not so much my paperwork. Well, no, thank God my wife does all that. She's really good at it. We've got a great office manager. I'm not the paperwork guy, but I like being on the physical plan. I like changing things. I like to upgrade things, and I like for people to. Well, you know this about me. Like in the off season when they come back, when all of the big boaters and everybody comes back, I like to have something to go. Here's what I did while you're gone. You know, it's what we made it nicer for you. We made it. This is now here, and this is now. You know, we've added this space. I always feel pressure for myself, on myself, to do something somewhat grandiose to show people.
But I remember you always keeping very good books.
I was pretty good. I had my little satchel, you know. I mean,
you kept it invoiced. You kept it all together.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the best on the computer, Dee. I resist that. So when it comes to, like we're talking,
You're
15
more of
years
a
ago,
hard copy guy.
I like to touch it. I like to have a pen. I like to be able to write it down, be able to pull from where I know it's at.
You keep files?
Yeah, we keep files up there. Now, most of it's all computerized now.
I mean,
though.
at your home, or just everything done at the marina?
They're probably both now, you know, it bleeds around. But now everything's so computerized that the joy of keeping those files and the joy of keeping those handwritten notes, which I did find joyful. I enjoyed doing that. It's just not there anymore. That's something that's kind of gone by the wayside, you know, as far as what you can do. But matter of fact, we got some new software in the other day, well, at the beginning of the summer. Oh, man. It's the newest.
Is it specific for boat docks?
Yeah, it's called Marina Go. It's specifically for that. So it seems to me like every new technological advance just takes a little bit more out of it, you know, as far as for me. And I'm an old timer. I mean, I think old ways, you know. But
What made you be interested in military history? I mean,
yeah, well, my parents got divorced when I was very young, but I grew up my early years on an Air Force base. So,
where at?
It was in Indiana, Grissom Air Force Base. We were a tanker base, so we didn't have like the fighters whipping around all over the place. We had the big tankers, so it's kind of like one of those things. You weren't important until you're important, you know. And by God, when you're out of gas, we were super important. But we lived on the back gate of the base, so from where my bedroom, I could look out my back window. And on the back gate, there was always two guards, M16s on their back, and typically there would be a guard dog there. This is back in the early 80s. And I remember every night I'd go over there and look, and I'd always make sure they're there.
Feel pretty safe.
Oh, man. Well, there's two guys with machine guns.
Yeah.
They're they got to go through those guys.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, this is really great, you know, and my parents got divorced when I was young. I was probably five or six. And we moved to Indianapolis, okay?
You and your mother?
Yeah. So we moved to Indianapolis we went from base housing, family housing, to like a big apartment complex. Very different. Very, very different. Very striking to
So
a
you
child.
were no longer a military kid?
No. My dad, he had gotten stationed, I'm trying to think, one of the bases near London. So it was not a great relationship there, so I didn't get to see my father for quite a while. But shortly thereafter, we moved to Tennessee. And I don't know if people have been around here or not, but Rustic Villa at the time.
I remember Rustic Villa.
Yeah, when it was first done, we moved in there, got a
Why Cleveland?
my grandfather lived here. He had moved down here and had one of my aunts and my uncle lived down here. So my mom was just kind of trying to get near family, some support with kids and all that. So we moved into a duplex with one of my aunts, and the three of us, my brother and my mom, my mother and myself. And I remember the first night. Now, Rustic Villa was out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was at the time. Now it's not, but at the time it was way down the path.
It was not the Taj Mahal.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, pretty nice for me, though, coming from, the hood in Indianapolis. But I remember looking out the back window, and in stark contrast to the guards with machine guns, there was the back door, and then 10 feet, and then solid woods.
Yep.
So I looked out there, and I put a flashlight out, and there's eyeballs. It glinted off eyeballs. So to me, of course, those were murderers.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't. It was probably a rabbit, a squirrel, maybe a deer out there. But the terror, I was like, oh my gosh, man, because you go from one extreme, safe, to, oh my God, there's a murderer.
And where's my dad?
Yeah. So, and then there's murderers out the back door. So it was jarring a little bit growing up. Now, granted, my mother, we lived there for quite a while, and then she met my stepfather. Ironic enough, they were both working at Coppinger Color Labs, right? It's used to be. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
still.
I remember.
So they met there and got married very shortly after that. And my stepfather and I, he's a great dude. One of the best friends I got. Could not be more grateful for a human being to be in my life than my stepfather. He's my buddy. But the irony of this is, they met each other, Coppingers, of course, and then the house that we renovated out in, on the river was Sonny Coppinger's house. So, I mean, it's kind of weird. You live in a small town, and then everything kind of comes full circle, a lot of times.
You felt like you'd made it.
Oh, yeah. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. But it was just ironic that my parents met at Coppinger Color Labs, and then we were in the middle of renovating Sonny Coppinger's house. So, it was a trip. It was a trip.
That is ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ironic things like that happen to me.
Yeah. More times than they should have, numbers-wise.
You ever see your dad now? Your real dad?
He passed away in 2017. So
Not that long ago.
No. We had regained a relationship as an adult. I did. It was strained to a certain extent, but really kind of picked up. He's a nice guy. I had no issues with him. I hate that what happened. I missed 15 years of living, knowing him. Yeah. But no, I did. We did Christmases together, and
so it ended up being okay.
Yeah, I mean, of course you can look back. You got strained relationships and whatnot. And don't get me wrong. I mean, the last 10 years of his life, there was no strain there.
Yeah.
It's just I felt bad because there was a big vacuum there.
What are you going to do?
You can't do anything about it. You just do the best you can. But when he did pass away, it was sudden. It was unexpected, obviously. He had just come out and visited with us. He was in the Air Force, of course, and then when he got out, he worked for Halliburton. He was driving those big tankers that they were when they were shutting down bases on Iraq. He had his truck shot out many times. But when he got done with that, he got on with one of the Halliburton affiliates down in the border towns. There would be the super heavy oil tankers that would bring the oil from the fields to the refinery. So he would be out for a month or two at a time. He had just come in, had dinner with us. And I think everybody can kind of relate to this story. I mean, probably, if you haven't had something like this happen, the likelihood is probably good that it will. Had dinner with him, made plans to go fishing. He's going to start cutting back his hours at work. He's retirement age, and he wanted to go fishing and spend some time. I said, that'd be great. We'll look forward to that, blah, blah, blah. Hugged him. That was the last time I saw him. He went down there at his place down in Texas. He had just come in for the night, went to sleep. That was it. So you always make these plans with these people, and that's going back to talking about Joe Rogers. You have all these people that you make plans with, and you intend to do them. You do intend to do them.
Yeah.
But man, sometimes you don't have time to do them. So I just, and I'm not just saying this to anybody out there listening. I'm saying it to me, myself. I'm telling myself, if you want to do something, man, you just need to do it. Just do it. And I think a lot of people think there's always going to be time, and there's a lot of times there's not.
Yeah, life's got all kinds of roller coaster rides, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you like most about military history? We missed it.
Well, what I like the most about it is, a lot of it's pretty cut and dry. And I like the fact that, and I was very specifically interested in Napoleonic era. It was huge armies, new technology, new tactics, watching how the back avenues of policy worked and how they worked for and against him, and kind of watching how countries will turn on each other. So you can kind of feel it happening, but even in retrospect, some of it you can say, okay, well, I know how this turns out, but all the way up through, you're like, man, that just doesn't seem like it's going to turn out that way, And then you see what errors were made or what backstabbing occurred. I find that the espionage and
Is it common with all eras?
Yeah, it
you
is.
think?
Yeah, I think it's going on. Obviously, it's going on now. I think it's probably gone on from, even back all the way to the very first battle, Cain and Abel or whatever. I think he probably got the jump on him. He probably wasn't real honest about the fact that he was going to try to attack him. And it's the same thing throughout history.
Probably had propaganda afterwards.
He probably did. He's like, hey, listen, the dude, he got on me first, But numbers, it just comes down to numbers and looking at numbers and dissecting numbers. I always found that interesting. I always liked it. Plus, I always like to see, the different.
What do you mean numbers?
Like if you're looking, like you take certain battles where one side is completely outmatched. Numerically, you got 12,000 versus 60.
Yeah.
But the 12,000 win. I want to see how they did it. What was their strategy? How did they pull that off? Is it the quality of the troop? No, a lot of times it's not so much the quality of the troop, it's their tactics are just better. You
mean when the 6,000 beat the 12,000?
Or the 12 beats the 50, or whatever.
Whatever the tactic is.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how tactics work so well. And you can probably work some of that into your personal life too, as far as how do you strategize? How do you place yourself even though you may feel outnumbered, even though you may not have.
The Art of War.
That's right. Sun Tzu.
Did you read it?
Yeah.
You read?
Yeah.
Well, if you just put that in your everyday life, it's pretty well on it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There's a couple of them in there. You're like, what in the heck is he talking about?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. But a lot of them are great. They're great,
I don't think that book was copywritten, was it? Because you get all kinds of different versions on that.
Yeah, or maybe there's just a gigantic version, and
summaries,
they take so many of them. Yeah. But that was my.
When did Sun Tzu? When did he write that book?
Gosh, I don't even know. If I was guessing Sun Tzu, that would probably be in the 1100 AD maybe. Was it like the?
So it was after Rome or before?
Oh yeah, I would say it's after Rome. Yeah, considerably after. Well, depends.
Yeah.
You consider Byzantine Rome or?
Some do, some don't.
Yeah, that's right. I was having a conversation with someone the other day. He was like, I went to Istanbul. I was like, well, I prefer Constantinople. He's like, you would.
That's what I said, yeah.
But,
That's so weird. That is after the Republic.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. But I do consider that Rome.
Yeah.
It's still Roman,
Yeah, still, it's Italian.
Yeah.
I consider it Italian.
But now, of course, the legions that, you think of legions looking like they do in your mind. If you say, a Roman legion, in your mind, you put together exactly what you think it looks like. And if you say, okay, a Byzantine, circa 1300 legion, well, it wouldn't look anything like that at all. I mean, it was mostly completely changed over to like mobile, archers on horseback, more akin to like the Berbers or something like that.
Yeah.
Totally, it would not mentally, visually, with what you think and what it was. So, I mean, arguably you could say not Roman, but you could also equally argue, say it is Roman, based on the laws and the architecture and everything like that.
Right.
Or if you're looking at strictly military, it would not be, of course.
Boy, it's history's. You think history repeats itself?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. It's just going to do it over and over and over. I mean, we're kind of overdue for a world war at this point, aren't we?
We really are. I
Yeah.
mean, we're almost due for some people. Everybody's saying, we're getting ready for World War III. Of course, they've been saying that for 30 years, but I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't.
You got to hope for the best.
And I don't know if I'm just getting old and cynical, or if it's really
maybe a mix there. But I would say, and I think it could be pretty well argued, that we're probably as close to it now as we sit here today as we have been in my life. Looking back at all of the possibilities, I mean, there were some tough times, but at least there was some diplomacy that was being attempted. Now, this is not happening on a high level to prevent it, which is before it was, or back avenue, some big boy was talking to another big boy. Cuban missile
even
crisis.
back in the old days,
Yeah.
they'd go meet with the people.
Yeah, that's what blows my mind away. Why aren't they talking? I mean, we had the whole first part of this conversation, how important it is to sit and talk to somebody. Don't have anything. You can't leave. I wouldn't want to have a problem with you and leave something unsaid. I'd want to go ahead and get it said, make sure we squash it right now. And neither one of us have nuclear warheads. But now if we both had nuclear warheads, it would be more important for us to probably get things
Even
talked
more
out.
so, yeah.
You would think, but apparently that's not as important.
I think that people are not for the greater of the country than they were before, because it used to be all about the country,
Yeah.
the country, the country.
Yeah, nationalism.
I mean, they would carry the stick with the, what do you call that? The stick with the emblem on it.
Oh yeah, like you talk about the Roman eagles.
Yeah, or whatever
Yeah.
it was. They always,
Yeah,
and that was important. And
Prideful.
that would be just like we had that picture of the flag with the
on Iwo Jima.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
We've lost some of that.
it's maybe it's not for the greater of the country, that it's more for an acceptance of all,
Yeah. Well.
which is
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough one, isn't it?
That's a very tough one. Well, right now, I don't know. I think there's just so much division right now that makes it very difficult for people to see eye to eye. Or hell, we don't have to see eye to eye. I mean, we can see off center, but at least we're seeing each other. I don't think people are willing to do that. I mean, you got everybody at everybody's throat. I mean, you got women that hate men. You got tall people that hate short people, and vice versa. You got blacks hate white, white that hate black.
Republicans hate Democrats.
Gay versus straight.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's so unnecessary. It's unnecessary. You don't have to. People don't need to. The more definitions you put on people or on yourself, I think it's extremely bad. There's no good outcome for that. I think we're all human beings. We're all here for a second. We're here for a second.
Just a second,
We're
man.
here. It's over, So why would you want to have so much hate and divide yourself from everybody? I'm this, and this, and you're this, and this, and we can't. I hate you. You hate me. Why? Why would you do that? There's no reason for that. There's good in everybody. There's bad of all the types, all the flavors. There's somebody bad, and all the flavors. There's somebody going to cause a problem. But that doesn't mean you vilify, the whole entire group and say, well, I can't be friends with you because you're this. Well, that's crazy. You need to. If people thought of it more on a local level. When I say local, I mean person to person, as opposed to faceless mob online and face, these guys piling in on each other. That's craziness, man. It just breeds hate, and it breeds divisiveness, and it breeds what you just described. There's less cohesiveness. There's less what's best for the nation, what's best for the country,
nation, not
what's
just,
best for all of us.
I mean, we all do what's best for our family, do what's best for the community,
Yeah.
and then what's best for our country.
Yeah. But some of that cohesion's been lost, and somehow during all of this labeling that everybody's, it's been intentionally put on you. These labels. It's basically made everybody's been turned into a lobbyist. We're all lobbyists. Everybody's like, well, we hate this group and we demand this for us, or we hate them, and then those people are hating them back and they're demanding this for them. Just think of the waste of money. There's people that can't even eat. There's kids that are starving, and people are willing to spend millions of dollars hating another group.
I believe
and millions
it's going
more to hate that group back.
I believe looking back, we're going to say that was what ended it all. That was what ended the division.
Well, in all fairness, going back to the Roman days, it was the internal destruction of Rome that caused the external destruction of Rome. It was internal that destroyed them first, and then it just collapsed in on itself.
Or maybe it was because as they took over countries, those traditions migrated with their traditions.
And it waters down.
And maybe it watered down.
Yeah, there's, yeah. And then you've got the greed and the,
Maybe it was both. Maybe it came from both ends, from within side and as they took in countries, they would sort of, if we took in Mexico, then we'd eat more tacos.
Right. We eat a lot of tacos. But basically, what they did was, it was costing so much to keep the masses happy. Rome lost tons of money for hundreds of years, but they just threw money at the problem as much as they possibly can. Keep them busy, happy, drunk, watching the games, betting, whatever it takes to make them happy, make them happy. And the more that happened, and the politicians got kickbacks, and the politicians were wealthy beyond belief, And then the soldiers were out on the front lines keeping the borders, And sometimes they'd get paid, sometimes they wouldn't. And then eventually, so much was getting spent that the gold coins, they start cutting, the politicians, they cut chunks out of them. So they look like a Pac-Man, So you have a Pac-Man, that still counts, though. And they take that other piece and put it with a couple more, and they make another Pac-Man. So instead of having 4 coins, they now had 5. So they devalued the currency, and they were paying the troops with Pac-Mans, devalued currency. And then sometimes, eventually, just stop paying the ones out there on the borders.
But that was after that. That came in after they became a republic.
Empire. The Roman Empire. The republic was first, and then once Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon.
Right.
So yeah, that happened at the end, the late stages.
So
That's when the
if they
barbarians
would
just overran them. And a lot of times, even some of those, the furthest outposts, they didn't even fight. They just abandoned their post. They weren't getting paid. Some of them didn't get paid for 2 or 3 years. So
you can't manage that much.
No,
just like us, we can get too many jobs going.
There's too many
Doesn't
guys.
matter how good we are.
And out of sight, out of mind. The politicians were like, we're going to keep the people happy. We're going to weaken our defense. Well, bada bing, bada bang. Next thing you know, here we are. So. In history repeating itself, it's not just Rome. Almost every single empire has followed the exact same arc. It's the same arc. And to think you're not going to follow that arc is silly. It's happened 100 times with countries.
And it's not going to happen to us because of why?
Yeah. The arc is forming. Where's the off-ramp that you're expecting? Because otherwise, it's following the exact same arc as before. So
is military history the same? Would that be following the same thing as economic history? Would it be the same thing, or is it a different?
Not necessarily, because the economic times, if you have a booming time, like the Roaring '20s, for instance. All the big words were making tons of money, right? It's a whole different thing. Military would be like when things go bad, Napoleon. Like when things go bad and the military takes over, or you have a big military situation that occurs, say with Napoleon. Well, then during the Roaring '20s, people were just making money, getting drunk, and going to speakeasies, right? Military history, there's a much bigger price to pay. I mean, there are people getting their heads cut off with a guillotine all over France, off with their heads. And then it started a war that lasted 20 years that cost, I don't know, 30 million people over the course of the time. So military history, there's a much, much bigger price to pay, in my opinion. Now, you could have forced economic issues like that would be big, like
German or no?
no, like that would be military, but like for instance,
Greece.
Russia, they had, was it the Polish Ukrainians? One of the groups, they after World War II, they took most of their grain and sold it as export profits, right? Well, they took so much of it that it caused a huge famine. And a ridiculous amount of people, 6-7 million people died because of a famine that was caused by greed. So it was a financial, huge loss of life. And then you got people in military, as far as military history, like Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge. They had in their minds something that made sense. They wanted to take all of the academics, all of the super intelligent, the political class, the aristocrats, kill them all, and they did. And then they forced an agrarian society, forced everybody to go back to the farms, shut down, burnt the cities, and forced them to go back basically to the 1400s. This is no joke. This isn't probably in your lifetime. This is in Cambodia. And he ended up, before he was done, took out a third of the entire population of the country. So as far as like percentage of countries to be annihilated, that guy's got them beat 10-1. I mean, a third. But then if America lost a third, there'd be 120 million people gone. That's what that guy did to his country.
What could he be thinking? That's stupid.
In his mind, though, he wanted to divorce integration with any of his neighbors, divorce all of that and have everything super nationalistic and only nationalistic. And he didn't want to have uprisings and people having the ability to buck the system. So to him, it made sense. No, by the time people started dying in mass, obviously it didn't make sense. But he just doubled down on it because he was so far down the road, So I think some of the worst outcomes have come from, I'm not going to say the best of intentions, but at least to whoever is thinking them, they had non-nefarious intentions, but it just turned out to be an absolute travesty. And that's what that's the scariest part about history. It's not the evil guy out to do evil ends up doing evil. That's not the scariest part. The scariest part is the guy that's got, or the government that would have good intentions based on a sandy foundation that ends up inadvertently causing millions of people to die. And that has happened over and over and over and over again. So to me, that's frightening because it's not always the evildoer that's going to do you in. It's the people with the good sounding plan.
Just bad ideas.
Bad ideas.
Or maybe they stick with the idea too long.
Yeah, bad ideas that they believe in and
they just couldn't get off of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it started out as a good process.
And then it just went too far.
Like if we don't have any immigration, we're going to run out of people.
Yeah, you can't have that. You have to have...
do you think we're losing population?
America, no. But now most countries in Europe, yes. And if you look at the population graph, I mean, it's what you really want is kind of like, a pyramid shape. As they're growing up, they're taking care of the smaller amount up top. And what's happened now, which I'm sure you're aware of, most of it's like the older people, it's a huge ball, and it's being held up by a stick.
Like a teardrop or something.
Yeah. And as these people are aging out and as they're retiring, when they do, then they're relying on this much smaller amount of people than they should have supporting them, keeping infrastructure up, keeping economy going and growing, because you can't just, if you stagnate, obviously that's terrible too. So that small amount of people have to keep these people fed, pay their Social Security, pay their retirement, and push forward the economy. It's become very problematic. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of what's going on in Europe is because I would argue that you embark on as big of a national program for having babies as you possibly can.
So you're saying, so I'm not saying the population is decreasing. I'm saying the increase in the population is decreasing, which means later will come a decrease.
Yes, because the population, there's a large percentage of them elderly now.
Right,
Yeah.
and in other words, we're not keeping up.
Right. Instead of you and I grew up in the nuclear family. You got the mom and the dad and the two kids, and
Sometimes they had
The station
three.
wagon,
We
sometimes three,
you got
yeah.
two brothers, right?
I got a brother and a sister.
Brother
yeah.
and sister. So,
Yeah. So I mean, it was.
and our parents grew up with 11 brothers and sisters.
That's right, and that's where you get that sweet pyramid.
And how many kids do you have?
None.
There you have it.
Yeah, Carrie's got one, so I have a stepdaughter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as like building population, no, we are not part of, sadly. But that's what you want out of a population. If you're playing a strategy game, if you're playing populace or civ, you desperately want the population to be growing all the time.
Which is what Rome did.
Growth. Yeah. Until, they started depopulating out in the rural areas. Now, Rome itself, you don't want a city to overpopulate. You want your country to populate at a regular rate. That'll give you the laborers, that'll give you the economy, that'll give you soldiers when needed. But you'd want people to have a lot more babies, especially Europe is. France is actually, I think, negative now. So, I mean, they're actually falling.
Italy, I think, is following.
Yeah, so they've got a real problem on their hands. I mean, real problem. Ours, it could be a problem. It will be a problem probably in 20 years. But it goes back to, my earlier saying where I was like, man, I'm super glad I'm not any younger than I am. Hope this bad boy keeps the wheels on for as long as it can.
Yeah.
Because it is scary. There's a lot of X factors that we've got to look forward to in the next 20 years. Things that we can see coming that could be a problem, and there's things that we cannot even fathom. And those are the ones that are scary because you don't even know where they're going to be, but by gum, they could get you, and that's what scares me, is there's just too much out there.
It's really, one thing that's helped me over the years is staying energetic and enthusiastic and positive and all these things. But as you get older, you got to hunt for more of those things, don't you? To stay enthusiastic.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like food. I mean, once you've tasted all the food, you're not going to get as excited over a birthday cake when you've had 500 of them.
How many new songs do you listen to, current songs that come out now? Do you listen to many of them?
Accidentally, maybe, but no. I'm pretty much staying in the 70s, 80s, early 90s. Yeah. You?
I try to stay pretty current.
Do you really?
Yeah. Yeah, Sabrina Carpenter and...
So I don't even know who that is.
Oh, Lord.
I know.
You're missing out.
I know. You youngsters,
Halsey? No Halsey?
No. Now, obviously, you listen to it on the radio, but I'm trying to think of some current ones that I don't even know. No,
I think listening to current music helps a person to stay enthusiastic.
Maybe you're right.
Because we've heard those old songs so many times we can sing them.
That's the best part, right?
Yeah, but...
So when you're still riding bikes a lot.
Yeah.
Right? When you're having to dig deep, like you're on the tail end of a tough one. What are you listening to?
I'm listening to Ozzy Osbourne.
All right.
Maybe the Eagles, Back in the Fast Lane.
Okay.
Quiet Right. I'm listening to. I try to stick with those songs that match the
tempo.
Like a tempo that.
So as you're going downhill, you're listening to Christopher Cross or
no, Back in the Fast Lane.
Oh,
and I don't get as fast as the other guys, but in my mind, I'm going real fast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you ever remember that song? I forget who it was. It might have been a Florida Georgia line where the little boy's riding the mini bike, and the song's about him going real fast, but he's not going fast. But in his mind, he's really tearing up the tracks. So that's me.
That's you?
That's me. In my mind,
Well, I'd say you've been doing it for a while. I'm sure you're pretty
I
pretty well
try.
versed.
So what else is new? Is that about it? We covered everything? We've covered everything but the politics, business, relationships, covered everything but religion.
All right. Where do you want to go with that?
What's your views on religion?
Well, I grew up Church of God. Grew up in North Cleveland as a child in the youth group, and of course I went to Lee for a couple of years. My view on religion is, I think you can question it all you want. And I think deep down everybody knows there's something bigger than us out there. There's got to be. Drive down the road and act, oh, is this just happenstance? Surely. If you look around and you got your hand on the steering wheel and you're looking at the asphalt, you're looking at the sky, you're looking at the birds, something is bigger than us. This just doesn't happen. I mean, think about it deep enough, you go, something's there. So I do believe that. I've got I've got a couple of pastor friends that I really think highly of. I've got my questions, of course, like anybody does. But I do believe in God. And I feel like I had a conversation a while back with one of the pastor friends of mine, and they had built this very, very beautiful big church. It's a big church, beautiful. It's got sitting gardens and prayer rooms, and it's really impressive. And they've got a small youth building unattached, right? And we're talking about how keeping the population of church up. You know, they're having a lot of, just like we're talking, a lot of older people in the church, and well, they're going to be dying off. So the youth group is a much smaller group. And I said, you know, would it be a novel idea? I said, do you guys have a weight room down there, like a state-of-the-art weight room down in the youth group? No, we don't. We got a TV and some other stuff. I said, wouldn't it be great to have a couple of, Christian trainers that could have after-school programs? These guys are going to be going to the gym anyway. They're going to be going to the gym. Guys will be trying to sell them steroids or whatever else. I said, what if you had time to talk to them while they're working out, help them, teach them things as you go along, and you guys are certified trainers. They're going to come to you. You'll have more time in front of these guys. You can show them kind of what you're about. I said, that's a pretty good idea. I said, oh, that might help you out. I said, how big's your swimming pool out there? And they're like, oh, we don't have a swimming pool. I said, summertime, it's hot. They're out of school. They're going to be jumping off the cliffs or going to their buddy's swimming pool or going to the public pools. I said, wouldn't it be a great thing to have a swimming pool here? Because they're going to be doing it anyway. I said, you can have it out there. You could have time to have fellowship, have a nice snack bar there. You got hours that you can spend with a lot of kids that could be enjoying the pool while you have fellowship with them, and they would be doing something else that would be outside the sphere of your influence. So to me, I hope that the churches can kind of turn that corner and start spending a lot more time, energy, and thinking about what the kids are going to be doing, and they could fill those gaps. I think that would be a wise thing.
So you're not still avid Church of God then?
I'm not. I'm not. I do visit from time to time, but now obviously with the marina, you're pretty much
you're open on Sundays.
So we go back to where
if you're not at church on Sundays, go eat over at B&B Marina.
Yeah,
right?
but I think it's a good thing to have a strong moral fabric for the country. I do. I think that's something that, going back to the cohesiveness that we talked about earlier, I think that's part of where we've lost some. So, but I do believe in God, and I would say I'm very inquisitive. Let's put it that way.
I guess everybody is, because there's
so.
Yeah. What you got going next week? Just the same old thing?
We've got, my wife, she has been after this one group to come out there. It's called Priscilla and Little Ricky. So they're like regional favorites. She's been wanting these guys. So for over the past 2 years, now we got the stage. She's been trying to get them up there. And so that's the big thing that's happening this week is that we got that group coming to play on Friday night. So
what do they play? What kind of music?
They do a lot of covers, but there's a large group of them. There's almost like a rock bluegrass type feel to it from the videos I've seen. Now I'm not a fan like my wife.
Yeah.
I don't follow them like she does, but seems like every week, going back to that little dopamine hit, every week seems like there's something, some high point that we're looking forward to,
Yeah.
which is really nice. So I mean, there's always something.
So what time will the band start Friday night?
I believe they're 6 to 9, so it's a 3-hour thing.
And will people just be sitting, or will they be dancing, or both?
Well, it depends on the group, but yeah, we've had them sitting and dancing, and of course the way it's situated, the pavilion, all of it opens up, so you have people sitting outside, people sitting inside, and then you've got people outside and on the lawn area that is in front of the stage. So kind of, I mean, we've had it where JoJo Collins came and played, did a killer job. There were so many people there that day. There were people sitting in the grass, people, having picnics out there, and then people sitting and eating at the restaurant at the same time. So
Big night.
big
They
night.
lose a lot of garbage, or do you have to pick up a lot afterwards, or how's that work?
No, I mean, we've got it pretty much. I mean, people are pretty respectful. I mean, we've done a lot to the grounds out there, so you don't get anybody just straight up disrespecting things, just throwing trash on the ground. Now, not to be. I mean, there's of course at the end of the night you'll have.
But 30 minutes to pick up your.
Oh yeah. I would be very disappointed if people.
On a Friday night like that, what time does the traffic calm down and it's just a few people staying on houseboats?
Well, we close. We in the summer we close at 10 o'clock. I just want to.
So the restaurant's closed?
The restaurant's closed, and on a busy summer, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it'll take about an hour and a half to clean up. So, and that's one of my favorite things to do. Is certainly in the first 2 years, after getting your tail kicked in all night long, all day long, people in and out everywhere, boats all over the place, people getting gas. After everything was done, of course we were short on staff. It'd be midnight. I'd get there at 8, 9 in the morning, be getting home at midnight. That's just part of it. But I would enjoy, certainly on Sunday nights when it was all said and done, after everybody was gone and I'd help take the last bag of trash out, I would walk down to the gas dock, and there are several nights I can think of, the water's just perfectly still. No human sound whatsoever. And if I didn't know and didn't see it for myself, how busy that place was 3 hours before, I'd never believe it. But it's weird. You have just absolute.
And the water was just doing its thing. Everything was superficial, did it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just hanging out. It's just a catalyst for everybody to do their thing. But to be able to see it absolutely full to the brim, and then to see it completely calm, it was just it's such a pendulum swing. You're like, oh my God, never going to end, and then you're like, cricket chirp.
Did you have many people living on houseboats there?
No, we don't. We don't even allow that. We've got. When we bought it, there was 2 or 3 guys that lived there, and we grandfathered them in. But as far as like permanently living, other than that, we don't allow any of that. Now they've turned into kind of watchdogs for me. I mean, there's one guy. He takes it very serious. If someone flips a Tic Tac onto the dock at 2 in the morning, he'll tell me when it happened and what color it was.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about it, but we don't. We just have very, very few. 3.
So
I think.
why do you not take on any more houseboat stayers?
Well, it's just with the houseboats. They're big. They've got bedrooms. You're more likely to have
night visitors and
night
stuff?
visitors, people partying loud. You don't have to deal with that. But also, it's an uptick in our insurance too. So to have people that live there permanently. So
I see.
So we try to avoid that for financial reasons, but also, and more importantly,
So you've really taken this to just a calmer place with a little, once a week, a little 4 or 5 hour entertainment.
That's right. Yeah, it's definitely it's family oriented. I mean, you go out there any night of the week.
Because I used to go there in my teens, and there was few times when it was a rougher place.
Yeah,
It's had its ebb and flows.
That's right. Now it's family friendly. You'll always find there's kids out there throwing the frisbee, football, and that was one of after a couple of years, there was a July 4th. I don't know if it was the second or third year, And my wife and I were standing out there, and there were kids playing, tag football.
I think I was there that year. There was people everywhere.
Yeah.
And the fireworks.
Yes. And I told her, I said, man, this is what makes it worthwhile. We've got all these families out here. Kids are out here enjoying the outdoors, which I think is important. I think kids should enjoy the outdoors. Yeah. It's good for them. You got parents that are letting their kids play with other kids while they're enjoying themselves. Maybe they're having a drink. Maybe they're having dinner with their friends. But their kids are safe and they're playing and they're having fun with making new friends. So it's a win-win all the way around. And I'm very glad that we were able to make that happen. And again, it goes back to there's just an incredibly good community of regulars that we have. I mean, there's a large block of people, and they are very regular. I mean, they'll be up there 2 or 3 times a night, or not a week. They'll eat dinner. They'll bring friends. Have maybe perhaps a beer or a glass of wine, and we'll hang out and watch the game or whatever they do. They'll do it 2 or 3 times a week, and weirdly enough, it's like kind of like when you interact with your customers enough, you end up accidentally making friends out of it.
Sure.
So I'm not one that. And I'm an old guy. I'm not really looking to make a lot of friends. Yeah. But then you accidentally make friends, and you got this big wide spectrum of new friends that you really genuinely want to know about. I know her mom was sick, or this little boy had his arm broken. How's he doing? And you start, and it all happens kind of
accidentally. I guess
you're not paying attention, and you're like, next thing you know, you're like, oh crap. I made all these new friends, and it's a good thing. It's just, I'm an old dog, and I don't learn a lot of new tricks. I don't.
Wonder what you'll get into next accidentally, or who knows, right? You can't plan it.
No,
you don't know.
I'm thinking possibly that carny business I was talking about. I'll be traveling county to county with a bunch of mule carts, and I got my pots and things dangling.
Or maybe a rickshaw. Carry a rickshaw.
Could be a rickshaw. I'll be out there. If you see me pass by with a couple of, Ubering some rickshaw action, you'll know what I did.
If you weren't doing this or landscaping, and you weren't being a history teacher, what would you be?
Well, I'm too old for this now, but I wanted to go in the military, obviously. I had wanted to sign up with the Marines. Originally, my mom refused to sign so I could go early enough, like as soon as I could. She tore her up. But that would have been my original thing to do. But if I wasn't going to do this, honestly, I don't even know. You get so immersed in what you're doing. I don't even know. I don't have any like weird, outward desire to do anything really other than this. I think it'd be fun to. You got me, dude. I honestly put zero thought into what to do next because I really don't think I want to do anything.
Well, I think maybe that's a good sign. Maybe you're happy where you're at.
Yeah,
I'm not because you were when you were landscaping, where you were thinking, what else could I do?
Yeah, I knew I was burned. I knew I was done.
And now you're not.
So that's a good thing. I've still got some longevity here because I'm not thinking about. I guess if you think about it long enough, you got it pretty good. I got it pretty good. I do have it good. It's hard work, but I get to work with really cool people. I get to have a lot. I'm serving a lot of my friends now. We just talked about, they turn out, all my friends are coming out and hanging out with me, So is it long hours? Yeah. Is it hard? Yeah. Is it sometimes stressful? Absolutely. But to be able to work with some really cool people and to be friends with most of my customers, that's...
And really, it's just...
I can think of a lot of worse things.
Really, you're just collecting rent, keeping the grounds, and running the restaurant.
That's right. And all of that's relatively easy, except for that the restaurant can be tough, but
it's almost like it takes all the attention.
It does. It's the vacuum. You got 80% of your
and if you didn't have it, I'm going to guess the business at the boat dock would be down too. I think it pulls. Don't you think so?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it makes it more.
You almost got to have it.
Yeah.
Where else you going to eat over there? Driving the 58 shortstop.
Yeah. Yeah. I like having that spot. It's really good. We there was no liquor license out there up until we had it literally had to pass the Congress up in Nashville because it's a dry county.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had to actually through that. So be able to provide people with something nice to have and some place you can have a glass of wine and maybe a nice dinner.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of being able to do that. Now, I told my wife when we first bought the place, I was like, okay, babe, listen to me. Give me 2 or 3 years. I'll have it where we need to have it. In 2 weeks, it'll be 5 years. And the other day, I was like, babe, listen, in 2 or 3 years. So I think it's just I keep dragging the goalpost on her, but there's still a ton to do, man. I mean, there's, all of the owners pass these aerial photos to each other, right? They're big pictures, photos every 10 or 12 years, and I've got some that are black and white. So they pass them from owner to owner. That way you can see, and you can see what's happened throughout the decades. Well, at some point in the, late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in between the 86 and 94, they went from having a ton of trees there to no trees, none. And so the trees that are up there currently, outside of like the marina proper, we've planted every tree except for three little trees that were there. So we've planted. Now that's another thing I'm going to be doing. I want to plant. I'm not going to be a little Johnny Appleseed or anything, but another 30 or 40 trees to kind of get that growth going again. So in 10 more years, whenever they do the aerial photo, they'd be like, oh, well, somewhere in here, some dude re-treed the place,
Yeah.
So I wanted to feel less industrial and more like it was, to a certain extent, but better,
What's B&B stand for?
From what I understand, Gary Bryant, who owns Bryant's Garden Center, his father was one of the B's. So it was Bryant and something.
We don't know.
Yeah. So, but Gary Bryant's father was one of the original owners of the marina. That I do know. You try to.
There's a lot of history there.
Oh man, yeah. Well, weird thing that happened. There was a guy magnet fishing. Of course, everything happened. All these crazy, anxiety-ridden, traumatic incidents happened the first summer because why not?
Magnet fishing?
There was a guy magnet fishing over there in the back part of the marina by the bridge, and all of a sudden there's a big crowd going over there. Something's going on. I'm like, oh my God! So I run out there. This guy has pulled up a mortar shell with the wings. It looks like a Nerf football, but metal. And on the side of it, it had a 1942 date on it. But it was rusty. I mean, it was rusty. But he pulled it up. We called the cops. Like, hey, man, we got this thing, blah, blah, blah. So they come out there. Fire truck comes. Bomb truck comes. And I'm like, oh, please, God. So when they finally get it, they're like, well, we're going to take it. We can detonate it here off campus, but we'll have to evacuate the marina. Or, because maybe it wouldn't detonate.
Yeah.
But they're like, we're going to attempt it. We can attempt it here. You have to evacuate everybody, or we'll take it to the demolition place out in Hamilton County and detonate it next week. I'm like, well, I can't.
Yeah.
So take it. Turns out the thing was live, apparently.
Is that right?
Yeah. And here's the funky part of it. The year before, there was a guy down there in that area, right on where he found it, doing excavator work under that bridge.
Golly.
Yeah, and I wondered, I said, well, why on earth would there be a daggum mortar shell out here in this pond?
In Charleston, Tennessee.
Well, it turns out the marina was a farm. There wasn't any indentation where a marina was. It was just a farmland. So the local National Guard used it to train troops before sending them to Europe. So they were out
In
there shooting
1940.
mortar shell. Yeah, 1942 or 41, 42.
Golly.
Yeah, so they were using mortar shells in this farm area, and then I guess it was forgotten about completely, and they somehow dug this whole marina out, went through 75 years of usage, including an excavator running on top of it, only to be found, in 2021
By
or
a
2020
magnet fisher.
by a magnet fisherman. Yeah, so there you go. That's one of those what the heck moments, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to guess that. I told Karen, I was like, of all the things I could have thought was going to go wrong today, finding a World War II mortar shell.
Yeah, talking about
was
your
not-
insurance going up.
Yeah, well, we didn't say anything about that.
Yeah.
Like, have you found any mortar
Not
shells? Be more specific.
No, you didn't.
Yeah. But yeah, it's always those weird things. But that's what keeps you alive, man. Those unique things.
You've always been good at whatever business you were in.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I do the best I can, That's what you can ask.
I'm going to come out and eat there next week or the next.
All right. And once you come out on a Friday night, come watch the show. I'll make sure they got.
I'll come one night when the Dexter Thomas band is there.
The Dexter Thomas.
Yeah.
Band, you know, I think
You
I
have
know.
to, you have to pay the entertainers. I guess you do, don't you?
Yeah. Some of them.
Yeah.
It depends on how much.
Yeah.
You know who they are and whatnot, but.
So you budget that in, or how you do that?
We budget it in. Typically, sometimes we'll do a cover, which we do a small
Like
cover.
$5 or something, yeah.
It never really covers
Yeah.
it. So it may cover half or about 2/3, and we'll pay the rest. You know, but I think it's important to have live music out there. I do. I don't like it going on way into the night because that causes problems. But to have people like me or you, our age bracket,
Yeah.
you know, to come out and hear a killer band, have a good time, have a good meal, maybe a drink or two, and go home and be in bed by 10, that's
Yeah.
a pretty good deal. That's a pretty good deal, man. So
That's different than it used to be.
yeah, used to. I remember we didn't even get together to even have the first beer until 11, you know. Now, I mean,
We're still working till 11.
yeah, I know. Yeah, there's trash to be
Yeah,
taken out.
yeah.
I can't be goofing off
Yeah.
at 11, yeah. So
Ryan, I appreciate you coming,
absolutely.
buddy.
Thank you
I
very
really
much.
do appreciate it.